Hello. These are the instructions for the first of several assignments that I am labeling field projects. Field projects are the point where we try to take the skills we are learning in the classroom and apply them in the real world. And so I've subtitled these instructions Pruning All the Messy Context, because one of the first things we have to do when we look at arguments in the real world is prune back a bunch of stuff that isn't relevant. So the basic overview of what we're doing is pretty simple. You're going to find an example of someone giving an argument in the real world. And then you want to write that argument in standard form. The argument that you find might be something you see online. People argue plenty online, and they actually give arguments, maybe in the mainstream media, maybe in real life, maybe in print. So the world is full of arguments, and there should be, once you become sensitive to it, plenty for you to find. Another way of thinking about it is that previously in class 3, you were given something that looks like this. So this was one of our sample passages. A forest ranger is surveying the park, and he thinks, I can tell that bears have been down by the river because there are tracks in the mud, and tracks like these are made by bears almost every time. You took that passage and then you turned it into something written in standard form, like this. P1, P2. P1, there are tracks in the mud. P2, tracks like this are made by bears in almost every case. Conclusion, bears have been down by the river. Now we just want to do the same thing with something you find in the real world, rather than a passage that I have made up and kind of standardized so that's plausible but isn't actually reality. All right. So basically, there are just 3 steps here. You want to find a suitable example, explain the context, and then write the argument in standard form. And there's a submission form that you're supposed to use that has these 3 steps on it. And this is on the Canvas Dropbox. So looking for arguments. Arguments have lots of natural habitats. Politics, science, law, sports. These are all places where people argue, and when they argue, they give reasons for their beliefs. I find that some of the simplest stuff to do is to just go to a newspaper. So some standard examples of local and global newspapers are listed here. New York Times, BBC, Al Jazeera, Xinhua, The Economist, or the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, Lorraine Morning Journal. You can also just go to Reddit or wherever you normally interact with a bigger world online. But you don't have to do something that's online. You could do something that you encounter in the real world. All you have to do is give me a sense of what it is. So when we go back to this, the source, if you encounter it online, just put a URL in here. If it's something that happened to you in real life, just explain the story. If it's some other source, give me an author, a place of publication, date, title, that sort of thing. Place of publication meaning like what publication it's in, not like what city. So for the second part, you want to establish the context. So when you just fill that out there, let me know who's speaking, what context they're speaking in, and who the audience is. Also, if you're doing something from a newspaper report, sometimes the speaker of the argument is different than the reporter. Like the reporter might be describing an argument that was given, say, by Donald Trump's lawyer. So you want to be sure that you say that this is the speaker's Donald Trump's lawyer, but the source of the article is a reporter for the New York Times. All right. When you put the argument in standard form, look for the conclusion first. Okay, so be sure to so the conclusion is going to be the anchor for the whole argument. Understanding how you phrase the conclusion determines the structure of everything else. So that's going to be the important thing. If you're using a magazine article or a newspaper article or an online source, look for power positions. So in any piece of writing, the beginnings and endings of things are what I call power positions. They're things that the audience tends to notice, right? So the title, the subtitle, the first sentence, the last sentence of the first paragraph, the first sentence of the second paragraph. These are all places where you put things that you want to emphasize. And if you're a good writer, you are going to emphasize the conclusion of your argument. So you should look for the conclusion in those locations. When you're writing the argument in standard form, don't try to capture every argument in the article or every nuance in the article. Cut out background information, cut out empty rhetoric, cut out transition statements, cut out filler, cut out repetitions of the thesis or the conclusion. Just try and distill things as much as you can. Just extract the propositions being asserted. So if you're giving an argument and someone says, the thing that galls me most is that Obama is trying to remove the religious liberties this country was founded on. Get rid of the bit about like the thing that galls me most. The premise or maybe the conclusion, the statement that you're concerned with is Obama is trying to remove the religious liberties that this country was founded on. All right. I also give you a rubric online. You may not be able to read it in this PowerPoint, but basically, I've got 3 things I'm looking for. Have you identified the conclusion? Have you brought me an argument and identified its conclusion? And that's like 60 points right there. Have you correctly identified the premises? And have you correctly separated from argument from content? That's another 20 points each for those 2. If what you bring me is not an argument at all, you're here in the unsatisfactory column, and I'm going to ask you to resubmit a new article. If what you give me is satisfactory, but you still have problems with it, you're still not satisfied with your grade, you can resubmit either a new project or a reanalysis of the current example you brought me, and I'll have instructions personalized for you in my response. So you can resubmit, and I will take the higher of the 2 grades always. Okay. Last couple words. Last couple warnings. Don't include narrative background information as a premise. Just give me, what the person says, what their evidence is, and what their conclusion is. And please, when you place the argument in standard form, it should function as a summary of the argument that would make sense to someone who hasn't read the article or seen the argument that you saw. Right? So imagine that you're writing for someone who doesn't know what you're talking about, because in fact you are. All right, let me give you a quick example of what I am talking about. So just now I paused the video and then I went to the Washington Post website and I looked for an article that I thought would be suitable. And one of the easiest places to look is actually editorials written by the editors of the newspaper itself. They tend to be short and they tend to be give a concise case for whatever it is that they want to happen in the world. So quickly, I was able to find this. Donald Trump owes GOP voters a debate with Nikki Haley. Well, we can click on this. And you can almost see right away that there's going to be an argument here. And the conclusion is going to be this thing that's right here in the title. right? I already said titles are a power position. It's a place where you find conclusions, and along with the first and last sentence of the first paragraph, the last paragraph of the whole article, that sort of thing. The first and last of anything is a place where you find things that the author wants to emphasize. So right away, I think we're going to have an argument here, and this is going to be its conclusion. So let me pause and open up an answer sheet and show you how to fill it out. Okay, so like I said earlier, you need to give me your source, you need to explain the context, and then you need to write the argument in standard form. So let me just go ahead and start filling this in. It's the source is a Washington Post editorial from, and today is January 28. And since this is an online source, I'm going to give the URL, and that makes everything really simple. So let me just scooch over to this. Hopefully the screen is now showing the URL, and I'm just cutting and pasting the URL right over there. And if you're online, this is enough, right? So then down here, explain who is speaking, what context they're speaking in, and who the audience is. The editors of the Washington Post, and they're speaking, the way editorials often work is the editors, rather than giving their actual names, just speak as this collective entity, are writing on the editorial page to a general audience, right? Okay. So now we can go back here and begin to fill in the details. I already said that the title is going to give the conclusion, right? So let's go back and just put that in here. When we're putting things in standard form, we're going to write, this is going to be the conclusion, right? And then we're going to have some premises. Now, for the full article, there's a lot of stuff in here. The whole opening part is really just stage setting. But there are a few things you can identify, I think, as reasons why the Washington Post thinks that Donald Trump should debate Nikki Haley. So, such a clash would surely serve the Republican Party and the country as a whole by focusing attention on the degree to which Haley's accusations of fitness for office have merit. So I could actually cut and paste this whole thing over. I just highlighted it here, but I could do that and make this P1. That's a lot, right? Oh, and we don't even want the United Nations part. This is the thing that I highlighted. Such a clash would certainly serve the Republican Party and the country as a whole. Let's make this shorter, though. A debate would help the Republican Party and the country see if, we don't want to capitalize country, Haley's accusations that Trump is unfit for office have merit, right? So that's a little bit shorter. And there are going to be several premises like this in the article, but we don't need to highlight them all. I'm just going to put in a few of the important ones, right? A debate with Mrs. Haley would force Trump with Ms. Haley would force Trump to explain his proposal for a 10% tax on imports, right? So Trump has already announced that he's going to start a trade war with China, and this could be a very good thing or a very bad thing, depending upon what kind of people you listen to. That's a short enough sentence. I'm just going to put it in there as is. And okay, so this one here, we'd like to hear the two of them explain themselves regarding all of the above. Oh, God, what is all of the above? Well, you read this paragraph, and it's actually a recounting of the strange exchange they had about the origins of the Civil War. So let's just paraphrase that. P2 or P3 debate would let the candidates explain some of the things they said about the Civil War. And then I'm just going to give you one more premise. Like I said, the beginnings and the endings of things is our power positions. So this is how they close the article. Mr. Trump has been willing to face his accusers in court even when he's not required to show up. Why won't he face Ms. Haley on a debate stage? So it's something like, if Trump will debate people in court, why won't he debate Ms. Haley? And that should be enough, right? And just to make things complete, we will put in our little line. Oh, and we can get neurotic about formatting and make sure we've got hanging indents here, but you don't actually need to do this. And tabs. Tab. So yeah, that's basically what you want to do. You don't have to do it exactly like that, but that gives you a sense of the kind of thing I'm looking for.